Coming up on 2020 on ID, it seemed like any wreck on a wintry night. Two cars, one frozen bridge, opposite directions.
I lost my heart, I lost my life, I lost my entire family.
But was it an accident or deliberate? When a teenage girl in a lover's quarrel keeps texting at the wheel.
I want to kill myself. Goodbye, Ryan. I love you.
Is it a suicide attempt or murder?
Kill my boy.
It was an accident.
What would the jury decide?
To the charge of deliberate homicide.
Texting on trial. And a Saturday night encounter. She meets him and both their lives change in an instant.
He pulled off my pants. He was hitting me.
He goes on trial.
I was charged with rape in the first degree.
So why did she end up in prison?
I see the truth. I did what I had to do.
Unintended consequences. Hello and welcome to 2020 on ID. I'm John Quinones. We often make decisions, good and bad, that we believe will affect only us. And if we're lucky, we're right. But what happens when one person's action has devastating consequences for someone else? Can you ever truly right a wrong? As Deborah Roberts first reported in 2011, one high school student learned there are some things you simply can't take back.
She's the picture of a fresh-faced teenager, yet Justine Winter is about to learn whether something she did at age 16 will land her in prison for decades. It all started on a late winter evening in the Flathead Valley of northern Montana. Justine's dropping off her boyfriend at his home. At the same time, local resident Richard Pepple is in his car too, heading home. And at the Kalispell Middle School, Erin Thompson has just watched her 13-year-old son, Caden, perform in a school concert.
He was in jazz band. Drums was his big passion.
Caden's grandmother, Diana Johnson. Well, how was he as a little teenager?
High energy, very intelligent boy. He was one of 3 students that was asked to play at this concert, so Erin was attending that concert with him that night.
Erin begins the drive home, aglow with pride for her teenage son, and with something else. She'd found a later-in-life true love, Jason Thompson.
I knew when I met Erin, she knew my heart and I knew hers. It was right from the start we were in love with each other.
The two soon marry and begin a life together. 3 years later, a baby is on the way.
I didn't want anything more than just to raise family together. And to know that I was going to be with her for the rest of my life was a culmination of all my dreams, really.
It's just past 8 p.m. when Erin, now 4 months pregnant, and Caden, her son from a previous relationship, pull north onto Highway 93. Unbeknownst to Erin, driving in the opposite direction is Justine, a popular straight-A student.
She was smart. She was pretty outgoing. She really liked to talk to people and make new friends.
Desiree Landon grew up with Justine, sharing good times and grown-up dreams, like learning to drive. For her 16th birthday, Justine had just gotten a car.
How excited was Justine about having a car and her license?
Oh, we were so excited. We were stoked.
But Desiree had concerns about her friend's new boyfriend, 17-year-old Ryan Langford. His relationship with Justine would come to matter more than anything else that night.
Was Justine's relationship with Ryan a positive one? Was it a good one from what you could see?
No.
Why do you say that?
Because she wasn't hanging out with any of her friends. She spent all of her time with him. She was a different person. She was all about Ryan.
Justine was in love, or so she thought. She and Ryan kept each other's pictures on their cell phones. But on this evening, they're arguing over an entry in Justine's journal about an old boyfriend. Ryan is angry and jealous. Justine terrified of losing him. Their fight escalates even as she heads home, because she's doing something she and her friends know they shouldn't, texting while driving. Justine ignores those warnings and starts sending Ryan a flurry of frantic text messages. Goodbye, Ryan. I'm telling the truth when I tell you I love you. My last words, I love you, Ryan. He responds, "Yeah, whatever you say, you win, I lose." With each minute, her texts turn more hysterical. "If I won, I would have you, and I wouldn't crash my car." And this, it's ending. Bye, Ryan. On the dark road, there's construction, and the highway's now down to 2 lanes. As she nears the Stillwater Bridge, her teen romance spinning out of control, Justine is now barreling at 85 miles an hour. Just then, Aaron Thompson and Caden are coming the other way. Richard Pepple is right behind them. He'll never forget what he saw next.
I'm going, geez, what did I just see?
Did you have even time to sort of react?
I mean, it just exploded. Kaboom.
Pepple rushes to the tangled wreckage of the closest car, Justine Winters.
Her tongue had gone back into her esophagus. I just pulled that out, and then the white foam and the blood came out pretty profusely, and I didn't think she was going to make it.
He then races to the other car, where pregnant Erin and her 13-year-old son are trapped inside.
When I got there, I pulled the door open. She was trying to tell me something.
He would later wonder if she was struggling to get help for her son, buried in the wreckage.
It couldn't come out because her chest was so crushed. And I know she had internal injuries. And I held her hand and I said, "We got help on the way, just hang in there."
But she didn't.
Finally, she just blinked out.
I just all of a sudden had this dread that something was wrong. And I having to call up the hospitals or the police department and just try to find out if there was an accident.
Jason is finally connected to police.
And he said, "I so much didn't want to tell you this on the phone, but Aaron and Caden were killed in an accident." I've never been so wrecked. It's like I lost my heart, I lost my life, I lost my entire family.
Incredibly, Justine is alive. She's pulled from the wreckage, then airlifted to a Seattle hospital, her mother Mary by her side.
I don't know how many pints of blood they put on that. They worked on her the whole way there and pumped more blood in her. And I sat and rubbed her feet. I said, "We're fine, honey."
Back in Montana, Patrol Sergeant Ernie Freeberry begins the investigation.
So we had a lot of questions on why the Winters vehicle crossed the center line and hit the Thompson vehicle clear over in the far end of her lane. We didn't know why this happened. There had to be a reason.
So he questions Justine's boyfriend, Ryan.
He said that the two of them had been arguing all night and that Justine thought the two of them were going to break up their relationship.
Ryan admits he and Justine were exchanging heated texts in the minutes before the crash. Freeberry and county detectives examine them and see this one sent at 8:16. "That's why I'm going to wreck my car, because I'm a terrible person. I want to kill myself. Goodbye, Ryan. I love you." Just minutes later,
we had our first report of the head-on accident on Highway 93. Now we had a very clear answer. This is why it took place. She did just exactly what she said she was going to do.
Do you think she would have been capable of trying to take her life?
I think so. Because when she started dating Ryan, she wasn't the girl that I knew. She wasn't the girl that I grew up with.
So there's no doubt in your mind that Justine meant to do this?
In my mind, yes. There's no doubt.
She's guilty of murder. Deliberate homicide.
longtime county attorney Ed Corrigan.
She purposely went into that wrong lane of traffic, ran into that car, and had to know or should have known that by doing so, she was going to kill the occupants in that other vehicle.
He decides to indict this 16-year-old as an adult with the most serious charge possible, 2 counts of deliberate homicide. But Justine has no memory of that night. After nearly 7 weeks in the ICU and multiple operations, she comes home to rehab and back to school wearing a neck brace and a court-ordered ankle bracelet.
She's not evil. She's a good girl. I know deep in my heart it was an accident.
Justine would never hurt another human being, and she wouldn't hurt herself.
Delisa Willis and her daughter Amanda have known Justine all her life.
I think that they wanted so desperately to have someone to put the blame on to.
A small town torn apart, then a stunning aftershock. Amidst the debate about whether this well-liked 10th grader intended to commit suicide while taking 2 innocent lives, Justine's family makes a move no one expected.
Why would you stoop to something like that?
When we continue. As the seasons pass in northern Montana, 16-year-old Justine Winter is facing murder charges, accused of deliberately killing a pregnant mother and her son. It happened when she crashed her car minutes after sending her boyfriend frantic text messages, threatening to kill herself. The victim's family, racked with grief, is soon overcome with outrage when Justine's family files a lawsuit blaming Aaron Thompson, the woman killed, for the accident. Her husband is dumbfounded.
I come down to the door and here's this guy that hands me these papers to say that they're suing me for her pain and suffering. It was so absurd.
The lawsuit unleashes a wave of anger in this small Montana town, including posts on the newspaper's website. This is truly pathetic. She needs to spend the rest of her life in prison. And shame on you, Winter family.
When we found out that they had served him with that civil lawsuit, my reaction was, all that's going to do is agitate people. It's not going to change our minds on pursuing this prosecution.
At the same time, Justine is slowly recovering from her massive injuries and has no memory of the crash.
She had a bolt in her head. They had to relieve the pressure. And her neck was fractured. You notice a lot of difference in her mind capabilities sometimes?
You could tell that she had a harder time remembering things sometimes.
High school counselor Laurel Eckern worked closely with Justine when she went back to class.
You cannot define Justine Winter by what happened on March 19th. She's passionate, driven, caring. She's a good kid, and I can tell you right now it's exactly what she is. She's a kid.
A kid now facing a possible 200-year sentence. January 2011, nearly 2 years to the wreck, Justine Winter is on trial for double homicide. 2 small-town families now bound in grief and anger. Prosecutors lay out their case.
Winter's vehicle had crossed the center line.
4 grueling days of crash reconstruction.
Tire marks, marks in the road.
And detail about skid marks and fluid patterns.
Justine Winter's car encroached into the northbound lane, striking Mrs. Thompson's vehicle.
State crash investigator Barbara Watson testifies that construction on the bridge that night brought the road down to 2 lanes, and that Aaron had nowhere to turn when Justine's car careened into her lane at 85 miles an hour.
And Miss Thompson was going how fast?
Approximately 31 miles per hour.
Justine was accelerating full throttle at 85 miles an hour. My wife had been trying to slow down and wasn't able to get off the road, and I could only imagine how terrified she was.
And then the testimony turns to those desperate text messages between Justine and her boyfriend in the half hour before the crash. To the prosecution, clear evidence that Justine was a distraught teenager bent on suicide. Her weapon, a 2-ton Grand Am barreling 30 miles over the speed limit on a country highway.
I want to kill myself. Goodbye, Ryan. I love you.
Lead detective Kip Tkachuk reads out the texts.
That's why I'm going to wreck my car, because all I can do is up. Because I wanted to kill myself. I wanted you out of my car so I could do what you told me I couldn't.
And then this final text from Ryan, just 6 minutes before the crash.
Do the right thing. All your life you're a puppy and you run from instead of facing it. You killing yourself is just another way for you to run away.
The prosecution calls boyfriend Ryan Langford.
When you were at Justine's house, did you see items in her room that caused you to get mad?
Yes.
What did you see?
A journal about one of my friends that she had dated previously.
Ryan testifies the two argued all evening.
Could she have gotten the impression that you guys had broken up?
It was an argument, so Yes.
Then Justine takes off into the Montana night, and the wave of threatening text messages begins.
But you were concerned enough to try and call her several times, and you got no answer.
Yes.
Did you indicate whether or not you had a concern that she had possibly hurt herself?
Yes.
The prosecution rests. Now Justine's lawyers are about to mount a defense that will outrage Aaron's family. They begin their case with a jaw-dropping theory, the opposite of the prosecution's. They argue it was actually Aaron Thompson who caused the horrific crash that killed her and her son, Caden.
Did all the calculations confirm that the accident had occurred in the southbound lane?
Yes.
Defense witnesses suggest construction on the bridge may have confused Aaron, causing her to veer her white SUV into Justine's car. With wreckage strewn everywhere, it was impossible to know who was in which lane, says defense expert Scott Curry.
So, Mr. Curry, before you had even found what you believed to be the point of impact, you basically threw out what the Highway Patrol had concluded. Yes? Don't you consider that jumping to conclusions? No.
Curry says his conclusions were based on careful analysis of the evidence. Beyond the roadside forensics, did Justine's wave of desperate text messages constitute a suicide note? In court, battle lines are drawn. The defense turns to boyfriend Ryan Langford.
At one time, you described Justine as a person who could not even hurt a fly?
Yes.
Do you still believe that?
Yes.
Then, a protective father, Randy Winter, boldly defends his only daughter.
She did well in school. It was kind of like she was a model kid that you didn't have to worry a lot about. She wasn't into drugs, she wasn't into alcohol, anything like that.
Has Justine at any time, prior to March 19th of 2009, ever act as if she was depressed?
No.
So why would this straight-A sophomore suddenly threaten to kill herself?
I believe the communication was conversational. It did not, in my opinion, constitute a suicide note.
Enter defense psychologist Scott Poland, a national expert on teen suicide who examined Justine's texts.
I suspect that all the adults here would be quite surprised to know how many times young people talk about death, suicide, killing each other, and we have to be careful not to take it out of context.
I do believe it was an accident. I don't think that Justine Winter intended to kill herself. I don't believe that the texting constituted a suicide note, and I further don't believe she intended to harm anyone else.
Dr. Poland's belief is challenged by prosecutor Lori Adams.
Dr. Poland, let me get it straight. Nobody knows what Justine Winter's mental state was on March 19, 2009, correct?
Correct.
The prosecution introduced text messages from Justine to Ryan to show she was depressed about things at home and dependent on her new boyfriend.
You're the only thing holding me together. The only reason my parents won't get a divorce and move to an apartment or whatever is because of me. So I live with them basically hating each other and me. You make me know that at least one person cares.
But was it enough to convince jurors that Justine was really suicidal? After all, just one holdout would mean a hung jury or even acquittal. Freedom for the teenage girl.
That was a concern, that somebody on the juror would say, she's 16 years old, I'm just not convinced she did it on purpose. I'm not going to convict her.
What would the jury believe? And will Justine take the stand to tell her story? A story she says she doesn't remember. Stay with us. Throughout her 9-day trial, accused killer Justine Winter, now 17, sits silently, her face betraying little emotion.
When you sat in the courtroom and you looked at Justine, did you see remorse?
No. That's the thing that our family is missing from her. I think she's just in denial.
What do you think was going on with her? I don't know at all, because I saw the lack of remorse too. I just didn't understand it. I don't understand it to this day.
She was numb. I mean, and I understand that. We were all kind of numb sitting there.
Now the defense must make its toughest decision, whether to have Justine tell her story in court. An agonizing choice, but in the end, they elect not to put the teenager on the stand and risk a tough cross-examination.
She suffered profound brain trauma. She doesn't remember the accident at all. Had they put her up on the stand, I think they would run the risk of her alienating the jury by not being able to offer any kind of explanation for what happened that night.
We're finished, Your Honor.
So the defense rests.
Ladies and gentlemen, the case is now submitted to the jury.
Justine's lawyers reject a last-minute prosecution offer of a lesser charge, one that could mean as little as a 4-year sentence.
Court is now in recess. The bailiff will conduct the jury to the jury room.
All along, they've gambled on an all-or-nothing victory. And now, two families wait. They would not have to wait long. After 4 hours, the jury is back.
The Honorable Catherine Curtis presiding.
The court clerk reads the verdict.
To the charge of deliberate homicide for the death of Aaron Thompson, guilty. To the charge of deliberate homicide for the death of Caden Odell, guilty.
The words echo in the courtroom. Justine's family breaks down. Aaron Thompson's too.
I think we all just cried.
It was relief that at least the truth was reached by the jury, but it was also sadness for her, for her family.
I think we all were just kind of needing this to be done, wanting the truth to be heard.
Ms. Winter, having been convicted of 2 counts of deliberate homicide.
In my 28 years as a prosecutor, it's been one of the worst cases I've ever dealt with. How easily it could have all been prevented.
A tearful Justine is led from the courtroom.
And they took her away and did not let her hug her family. It was, very, very sad.
One of the first things you said was you felt for Justine's parents.
It would be so painful for me for anybody to know that you'd caused the death of somebody, having to face that. This is their baby girl, and that she is going to have to pay a consequence for this.
I am very, very sorry about it. We are. It's torn so much apart in our worlds, both worlds.
Her daughter now faces 100 years in prison for each count. But before being sentenced, the judge allows Aaron's grieving family to speak directly to Justine.
I want to see good things happen for you someday, but I think one of the biggest things of this you still have yet to grasp is the truth. This tragedy has been without a doubt the most life-altering, life-shattering, life-crumbling thing that has ever happened to our family.
Caden was, and you will never know how incredible he was. And you took him. You did it. And you need to own it. You killed my boy. You need to own it.
This family desperately wants something from Justine they've yet to witness.
The most important thing is to apologize. Show concern for what you have done and try to make amends. But have you ever once looked us in the eye, have shown and expressed even the slightest bit of sincere sorrow for everything that we've been through? We've waited and waited and waited for that.
Could that long wait finally be over? Before she hears her sentence, Justine speaks to Aaron Thompson's family for the first time.
No one will ever know what actually happened on the night of March 19th. I will never be able to say that I intentionally crossed the center line wanting to take 3 lives from all of you. I'm not saying that it doesn't take time, but I think that the chance needs to be made for you guys to be able to forgive me and to move past it.
It's not what Aaron's family had hoped to hear. Prosecutor Ed Corrigan offers Justine one last chance.
I understand why you weren't allowed to contact the families, and I understand why you didn't present testimony at trial. But what they've wanted to hear from you for a long, long time also is I'm sorry. Can you tell them that?
I'm sorry for your loss, but I cannot. I don't know what you're meaning by you want me to say that I'm sorry.
Okay. I don't have any other questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
And with that, Judge Curtis pronounces her sentence.
For the crime of deliberate homicide for the death of Aaron Thompson, the defendant is committed to the Department of Corrections for a period of 30 years, with 15 years suspended.
Then the same sentence for the death of 13-year-old Caden, 30 years. But Justine will be eligible for parole after 7.5 years when she's 25.
I think it'll hopefully give her a chance to have a life, to go to school or get married and have children or whatever she wants.
Two years after the crash, the wounds are still as jagged as the wreckage of the cars that collided that night. And in the end, the case would not rest as much on justice as on forgiveness.
Have you forgiven Justine?
I think to really forgive her would take her being sorry. Even if she doesn't remember that night, she would still have to own it that this was her.
Justine Winter later appealed both her conviction and her sentence. As of 2014, those appeals have been denied. While in prison, she received her high school diploma with honors. Up next, a devastating crime.
He pulled off my pants. He was hitting me. He raped me.
He goes to prison, but it's hardly the end of this story.
She said, "I've done a terrible thing. I deserve to be punished."
Stay with us. A late night and too much partying leads to a fateful encounter that will change lives forever. As Chris Cuomo first reported in 2010, what happened between a beautiful young woman and a man she didn't know would raise all kinds of questions about truth, justice, and what it takes to do the right thing.
Everything in life, even if you don't understand it now, happens for a reason.
Bjorni Peguero is a quiet, somewhat vulnerable soul. She's only 27 years old, but she's already been through enough challenges and tragedy to last a lifetime.
But I always said to God, I'm willing to take whatever you give me, because whatever happens is the best for me.
The story of what happened begins on the streets of New York City on a Saturday night in the summer of 2005. Bjorni's enjoying a girls' night out. As usual, she's with Aurora Pujols, a best friend who's really more like an older sister.
We were having a really good time.
Really good time?
Dancing, drinking, having fun.
To be blunt, the girls get wasted.
I drink like 5 Blue Hawaiians.
5 is a lot.
5 is a lot.
So you're drunk?
Definitely drunk.
As the night winds down, Bjorni and Aurora are sitting in Aurora's car while their friends pick up food from this restaurant. A group of men cruising for action pulls up next to them, inviting them to a party. Suddenly, one of them jumps into the car.
I remember being in shock because this guy just opens the car door and walks into the car.
He's inviting us to an after party.
What'd you think of him?
A crazy guy. Get into my car without permission.
The situation is a powder keg, so Aurora scrambles out of the car and joins her friends in the restaurant. She expects Bjorni to come with her, but instead, Bjorni takes off in her friend's car.
I was drunk, so I took the car and I drove.
We walked back out, and the car's not there.
Bjorny leaves the car at a nearby parking lot and piles into a white van with the stranger and his friends. They spend an hour driving around, searching in vain for the party.
I got scared in my way there because I thought something was going to happen. So I started crying and crying and crying.
Bjorny's friends, left high and dry, tried desperately to call her cell phone. Finally, they make contact and reunite with Bjorny and the car back at the parking lot. When they find her there,
her hair was all crazy, her mascara was all runny. She looked like she had been in a struggle.
Aurora and the girls are angry they've been ditched. Bjorny feels cornered and doesn't know what to do. Tensions are high. And then,
out of nowhere, she lashed out at me.
We got into a physical fight, which I started it.
The fight is an out-and-out brawl. The girls even crack the windshield.
And this is totally out of character for her.
Totally out of character.
This is not how she is.
No.
Aurora is furious and stunned, but the mood changes when Bjorny explains why she's acting this way. She says something terrible happened with the stranger in the back of the van.
He pulled off my pants. He was hitting me, and he raped me.
Were you screaming for him to stop?
Yes, I did.
When did it stop?
When he finished.
When she had been raped. And I'm like, feeling like horrible. Like just in shock.
The girls, enraged just moments before, are now totally sympathetic. They drive Bjorny to this hospital. She relays her account to the staff there, and they perform a rape kit. Detectives from the NYPD Special Victims Squad start investigating. Bjorny repeats to them her nightmare of being brutally raped. Then, in short order, they track down the white van and the guy who'd first jumped in the girl's car, a 28-year-old contractor named William McCaffrey.
Why did you think the police want to speak to you?
I had no idea, but I know I didn't do anything, so I had no problem going into the precinct.
McCaffrey tells the police he and his pals did cruise around with Bjorny in the van, then left her back at her car, drunk but unharmed. His denials are absolute and unflinching.
Did you rape Bjorny?
Of course not.
Did you assault Bjorny?
No, I did not.
Did you give her any reason to believe that you were a threat to her?
Not at all.
Supporting McCaffrey's claims, the rape kit comes back negative. The strongest evidence of a physical attack police have is a bite mark on Bjorny's shoulder. But still, if it comes down to a he said, she said, the cops are probably going to accept what she said.
Do they seem like they believe you?
Not at all.
But police have reason to be suspicious. McCaffrey's been arrested numerous times for petty offenses like DUI and assault. On the other hand, Bjorny couldn't be more credible. She sticks to her story. She's traumatized and doesn't hesitate to take the morning after pill offered by the hospital.
I have to take these pills because I cannot get no infection. I cannot get pregnant.
What happened at the end of the meeting?
I was charged with rape in the first degree.
McCaffrey maintains his innocence up and through the trial, even taking the stand to defend himself. Bjorny maintains his guilt, and almost solely on the basis of her emotional testimony, the jury votes to convict.
When you heard the word guilty, how'd you take it?
Terribly. I thought about my sons and if I was going to make it to see my grandmother, you know, or would I have to bury her from prison.
The sentence, swift and severe.
They told me he got convicted 20 years.
20 years. What do you think?
I start crying. I just want to get home, be by myself. Oh my God.
It seems the case is closed. Justice has been served and Bjorny can start rebuilding her life.
She felt relieved. Finally, something going right for her.
But in fact, everything about this crime story is about to be turned on its head.
It was totally untrue. No crime ever occurred.
Stay with us. With the ordeal of the trial behind her, Bjorni Peguero is ready to end her life as a rape victim and start again as a wife and mother.
My life keep going on with my child, my husband.
Bjorni settles into a stable family life in New Jersey with her new husband, Julio Mejia, her son Gabriel, and a steady job. William McCaffrey, on the other hand, is in New York's notorious Sing Sing prison, dealing with a rape rap, not the most popular of crimes on the inside.
You're always looking over your shoulder.
People try to beat you up in prison?
Of course. I was up the river. Literally.
When McCaffrey's not fighting for his life, he's fighting for his freedom, with the help of attorney Glenn Garber, head of a New York nonprofit called the Exoneration Initiative.
We're doing what we can to help a lot of people who've been forgotten and are languishing in jail.
Garber thinks the case against McCaffrey is thin and focuses on the only real piece of physical evidence, specifically those bite marks found on Bjorni's shoulder. After months of legal wrangling, he convinces the prosecution to agree to a DNA test.
The DNA came back and showed that there was female saliva on her arm and that there was no male saliva. That was a bombshell for us.
The tests also exclude Bjorni, meaning the marks were made by another female, most likely during that strange fight with Aurora.
And we thought that the prosecutor was going to say, yes, it's true, we made a mistake, an innocent man is in jail.
But it doesn't play that way. The prosecution argues the DNA could have been left by tears shed by the other girls while they were comforting Bjorni.
That seemed to be a preposterous story to me, but Mr. McCaffrey was not going to walk out of jail based on this evidence.
More than 2 years would go by and McCaffrey was behind bars serving his sentence. Bjorni was out enjoying the freedom of family and friends, but it would turn out she wasn't free at all. Bjorni was in a prison of her own.
Every time I see something in the news about raping, every time I see something about jail, this comes in my mind. And then here I am crying.
She starts to become distraught. She's not as outgoing. She doesn't want to do the same things anymore.
My husband was questioning me, why are you always crying? What's wrong?
At last, in the confessional at this New Jersey church, Bjorni reveals the secret which has been tormenting her. What do you say?
I told the priest that there was somebody in jail because I lied. I said he raped me when he didn't.
That's right. William McCaffrey never raped Bjorni Peguero. And Bjorni's accusations repeated to friends, the hospital staff, the police, the prosecutors, and the jury, all of it lies. Why do you think?
I don't know how that lie became so big. I don't know why. I don't know. I didn't want to say it didn't happen because I thought he wasn't going to be convicted because there's no evidence.
But she knows that now she has to make it right. The priest recommends talking to a lawyer, so Bjorni goes to attorney Paul Callan with her startling story.
She said basically, I've done a terrible thing. You have to get this man out of jail. Turn me into the district attorney. I've done something wrong. I deserve to be punished.
Beneath the surface, says Callan, there's a lot from Bjorni's past to explain her behavior. She's originally from a broken and abusive home in the Dominican Republic.
She was essentially abandoned by her own family and grew up largely in the streets. Her psychological situation is very, very different from the average person's.
Callan says with few solid relationships, Bjorni was terrified of losing her friendship with Aurora, the big sister figure with whom she'd had that fight. A fight which he says is the key to understanding the whole story.
She was just mad at me.
But when you told the lie to her the first time that night, she was then not mad at you anymore.
She was not mad at me anymore because she felt sorry for me.
And you wanted that.
And that's what I wanted from the beginning.
Eventually, news reaches the man imprisoned by Bjorni's lies. For William McCaffrey, her confession is an act of God.
Could you believe it?
Not at all. This is what I prayed for, you know. I looked at it like as a blessing. More people need to come forward and tell the truth.
But incredibly, the truth does not set him free. Even after hearing Bjorny's recantation, the prosecution refuses to acknowledge they've put an innocent man behind bars. Bjorny has to spend 6 months insisting the rape never happened. Finally, in August 2009, a judge frees William McCaffrey from prison. After wasting nearly 4 years of his young life locked up for a crime which never occurred, McCaffrey is reunited with his family.
Thank God. He's home.
Could you believe it?
It's surreal, you know. I was just happy that I was going to be able to be home, eat dinner with my family.
McCaffrey's conviction is overturned, and the court apologizes for the injustice. Now, it is Bjorny's turn to face the wrath of the New York DA. After all, she's committed a terrible perjury. Still, her lawyer asks for mercy.
Bjorny was a woman with no prior criminal record, and she had had the courage to come forward.
And then the stakes get even higher. Just a month before her sentencing, Bjorny gives birth to her second son, Daniel.
My son, oh my God, he's everything.
But despite all that, the court has a hardened heart.
And where are we doing this interview?
In jail.
And how long are you going to be here?
They gave me 1 to 3 years.
Throughout the ordeal, Bjorny's husband, Julio, has stood by her side.
It was incredible. My husband never judged me, not even for a minute.
But with a felony conviction, Bjorny is now at risk of being deported back to the Dominican Republic, torn from her family.
If you hadn't said anything, you'd be home right now.
I know. I don't regret it.
You'd be with your kids right now.
I understand. But I don't regret it because I see the truth. I did what I had to do. If I have God in my heart the way I have it, there's no way for me not to feel this peace that I feel now.
William McCaffrey has found a measure of peace as well. Despite all his needless suffering, he is still capable of an act of grace, forgiving Bjorny Peguero.
I just wish her well.
How could you have not been consumed with hate for the person that put you there?
You know, hate's not a good thing, you know. It kind of contaminates everything in your life. So if you end up hating, you know, everything else is going to go wrong. You got to forgive.
William McCaffrey later filed a civil lawsuit against the state of New York, and the case was settled. He also filed a federal lawsuit against the city of New York for violation of his civil rights. The city is contesting his claims, and the case is, as of 2014, still pending. Bjorny Peguero was later released from prison in 2012, deported from the United States, and sent back to her native Dominican Republic. I'm John Quinones. Please join us next time for another edition of 2020 on ID.